Dear Andy, it is approximately 1 year since I shared with you my rapid review of the evidence on ivermectin for COVID. It's 1 year since my video address to our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, advising him that we had a safe and effective medicine to beat the pandemic, and 1 year since you and I met to discuss working together to get ivermectin approved as soon as possible. Early in January 2021, we shared data and agreed that ivermectin looked like a cheap, safe, and effective way to end the pandemic, that it needed to be rolled out as soon as possible. We agreed that working together would facilitate this, and you joined our strong author team preparing to conduct a Cochrane systematic review. Before we could collaborate, however, you published your paper as a preprint. I will never forget reading this paper for the first time. You reported that ivermectin was associated with reduced inflammation, faster viral clearance. Ivermectin showed significantly shorter duration of hospitalization, and in moderate or severe infection, there was a 75% reduction in deaths, with favorable clinical recovery and reduced hospitalization. Incredible! At a time when hospitals were overflowing, people were being locked down to prevent viral transmission, and the death count was rising, here we had a safe, established, off-patent medicine that could reduce hospitalization, viral transmission, and deaths. Yet your conclusions were, ivermectin should be validated in larger, appropriately controlled, randomized trials before the results are sufficient for review by regulatory authorities. People were dying. We were told hospitals were overflowing. We had a safe old medicine that could help, yet you called for more trials. On the 17th of January 2021, I wrote to you, asking you to retract your paper, saying that it would cause immeasurable harm. We met on Zoom the next day.
I think I'm in a very sensitive position here. What I'm trying to do.
People are in sensitive positions. They're in hospital and ICUs dying, and they need this medicine.
Well,
this is what I don't get. Because you're not a clinician, you're not at the coalface, you're not seeing people dying every day, and this medicine prevents deaths by 80%. So 80% of those people who are dying today don't need to die because there's ivermectin.
There are a lot, as I said, there are a lot of different opinions about this. As I said, some people
We're looking at the data. It doesn't matter what other people say. We are the ones who are tasked with and we have the experience to look at the data and reassure everybody that this cheap and effective treatment will save lives. It's clear. You don't have to say, well, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that. It's absolutely crystal clear. We can save lives today if we can get the government to buy ivermectin. Your manuscript appeared rushed to me, and its methodology was substandard. I made no bones about what I thought about it. And I was not the only one alarmed by the poor quality and conclusions of your paper. Dr. Corey and Dr. Marek wrote to you and asked you to make corrections. An independent forensic communications specialist has since confirmed that there were 2 or 3 other voices in your paper. These unacknowledged authors contrived to manipulate the wording to undermine the positive findings on ivermectin. Why did you let them influence your conclusions? Whose conclusions are those on the review that you've done? Who's not listed as an author, who's actually contributed?
Well, I mean, I don't really want to get into. I mean,
I think it needs to be clear. I would like to know who are these other voices that are in your paper that are not acknowledged. Does Unitate have a say? Do they influence what you write?
Unitate has a say in the conclusions of the paper, yeah.
Okay, so who is it in Unitate then who is sharing who is giving you opinion on your evidence?
Well, it's just the people there. I
thought Unity is just a charity. Is it not a charity?
Yeah.
They actually have, so they have a say in your conclusions.
Yeah.
You criticize studies from other countries for not being peer-reviewed or published. The irony being that your manuscript was neither peer-reviewed nor published at that time, and it's had a profound impact on people's lives. Indeed, when we sent our own comprehensive review on ivermectin to UK authorities, we were told that Dr. Andrew Hill's review says the evidence on ivermectin is insufficient and that more trials are needed. There was much at stake in January 2021 when you put your paper on Research Square, both in human lives and in profits.
Rest assured, I'm not going to let this last for a long time. I'm not saying we keep going for another year.
The fact that you're saying you're not going to let it last for a long time makes you realize the impact of your work. So how long are you going to let people carry on dying unnecessarily? Up to you. What is the timeline that you've allowed for this then?
Well, I think then it goes to the WHO and the NIH and the FDA and the EMEA, and they've got to decide when they think enough's enough. Because,
and how do they decide? Because there's nobody giving them good evidence synthesis, because yours is certainly not good.
Well, when yours comes out, which will be in the very near future, at the same time, there'll be other trials producing results which will nail it with a bit of luck, and we'll be there.
It's already nailed.
Well, what I hope is that this stalemate that we're in doesn't last very long. It lasts a matter of weeks, and I guarantee I will push for this to last for as short amount of time as possible.
So how long do you think the stalemate will go on for? How long do you think your decade is going to allow the stalemate to go on for?
From my side, every single new trial that comes through, we're going to be aggressively adding it on, and I think end of Feb will be there. 6 weeks.
How many people die every day?
Well, there is a whole group of people who think that ivermectin is complete rubbish.
I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about them. I'm saying we know the evidence. How many people die every day?
Oh, sure. I mean, 15,000 people a day.
15,000 people a day times 6 weeks.
Yeah, sure.
First
I
thing
get
you have
it.
to try and get it into the UK, because at this rate, all other countries are getting ivermectin accepted.
My goal is to get the drug approved, and to do everything I can to get it approved so it reaches the maximum.
Well, you're not doing everything you can, because everything you can will involve saying to those people who are paying you, I can see this prevents deaths, so I'm not going to support this conclusion anymore, and I'm going to tell the truth. Billions have been spent on PCR tests, PPE equipment, and developing COVID drugs and new gene-based vaccines. But with safe and effective early treatment, none of the investments in novel drugs nor the restrictions on our liberty were necessary.
Our foundation is a bit more than 10 billion, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
We both know that the evidence on ivermectin extends way beyond randomized controlled trials. Real-world data, plus all those conversations we have had with doctors at the front line who are using ivermectin, leave no doubt that ivermectin is a useful medicine to both prevent and treat COVID. Are you right and all these doctors wrong?
I mean, it's very difficult because I've got this role where I'm supposed to produce this paper, and we're in very difficult, delicate balance. There are some people who say that we're already overstepping the mark and this is too strident because the mechanism of action doesn't support it. I know I keep going back to that.
Who are these people saying this?
I mean, when we met, I'm just talking about overall feedback I'm getting from all kinds of different scientists, not just authors, but
mechanism of action. There are other examples of drugs where we don't know how they work, but they do work.
yeah.
You know, and we use them. What has happened to the scientist who stated in December 2020? Difficult to see how bias assessment could change such consistent treatment effects. And in February 21, ivermectin causes faster viral clearance. Mass vaccination plus ivermectin treatment for anyone testing positive is the way forwards. Why have you now allied yourself with a small group who have a mission, it seems, to undermine ivermectin studies? And at the very least, why have you not spoken up when the media and the authorities have referred to this Nobel Prize-winning medicine as little more than a horse dewormer?
People are still taking this ivermectin.
That's a horse dewormer.
You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it.
What changed your mind? I have often wondered about that time when you said if your brother had COVID, you'd want him to get ivermectin.
I'll give you an example. My brother, he's 58, he's a smoker, and if he was hospitalized with COVID-19, I don't know that there isn't a way to get supplies of ivermectin into the UK. If I could, and I knew it was good quality, I would want my brother to be taking it.
I will try and support you as best I can with the data that comes through. But for now, what I've got to do, my responsibility is to get as much support as I can to get this drug approved as quickly as
Well, you're not going to get it approved the way you've written that conclusion. You've actually shot yourself in the foot, and you've shot us all in the foot. Everybody trying to do something good. You have actually completely destroyed it.
Okay. Well, that's where I guess we'll have to agree to differ.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you sleep at night, honestly.
Okay. All right.
You had an opportunity to make a difference. You had an opportunity to save lives, and you put your own career and you were pressurized, presumably by other forces, to change direction, and that reflects a lack of integrity, a lack of moral being that such a thing could have happened.
Knowing that there were cheap, safe, available medicines that worked, and advocating for them, and going against, official government opinion. We've all lost jobs now. I've had to leave my third job. You kept your career in front of, you put yourself in front of the welfare of humanity. I don't know what your life is like now, but ours isn't easy, and life isn't easy. And this pandemic hasn't been easy on anyone. And in fact, to say it's not been easy, it's been tragic for good portions of the globe, and not even directly from the disease itself, everything around it. And it continues. Had you spoken up, and it would have required of you blowing the whistle, you would have had to go in public. And at that time, there may have been journalists or a media outlet which would have picked up the story. I think now you would never get that, because the media censorship and propaganda is now near total. But at that time, it was not. That opportunity required sacrifice. It required you resisting the forces that were telling you to allow them to write your paper, to dumb down and mute your conclusions, because they clearly had other objectives, whether it was to support a global vaccine policy or new novel drugs that would make money. And you're up against massive financial forces, and I knew that. But you were also in a position where you had an opportunity to speak up. And at that time, had you spoken up, it would have made a world of difference. And I will say many, many people, I think, in a lot of different institutions had opportunities to speak up and become, in effect, a whistleblower. But I don't think their opportunities to do so They pale in comparison to the opportunity you had. History demanded a man in your position who was willing and courageous to speak up, and you did not. And your silence and your cooperation with the forces that wanted to hide the efficacy of ivermectin, this is an unconscionable thing that you did, and I think history is going to remember it. I hope history is going to remember it, because it has to be a historic lesson that we must speak up, especially when we're in a position where our voice makes all the difference to humanity, and you were not that voice.
In my opinion, your preprint paper published on the 18th of January did 3 things. 1, it was instrumental in restricting ivermectin's use. 2, it led to the discrediting and censoring of doctors recommending it. And 3, it facilitated the emergency use authorization of the experimental gene-based COVID vaccines. With effective COVID treatments, the authorities would not have been able to authorize these new and experimental drugs without better safety data. And in my opinion, the public would never have acquiesced to the experimental gene-based therapies had they been made aware that COVID was readily treatable with safe established medicines. The cost in both human lives and nation economies has been devastating. If there was a point when we could have averted the oncoming iatrogenic humanitarian crisis, in my opinion, it was that Zoom call. Together, you and I could have saved millions of lives and so much suffering. Look what they're doing now, Andy. They're injecting our children with experimental vaccines. If only you had made a different choice, and if only I could have persuaded you to do the right thing. I ask you now to make that difficult choice, to do what is in the best interests of your friends and countrymen, and to do what is in the best interests of humanity at large. Help to expose the corruption of science by coming forward to explain the pressure you have been under to undermine the evidence on ivermectin. Explain the delicate situation you were in January 2021, and name the people who influenced you to change your conclusions. Only then can we start to fix the harm that's been done. We will forgive you, Andy, but come forward. Yours sincerely, Tess.